So Rick, tell me, what made you go into photography? How did you get started and why?
You know, my parents were photographers. I learned photography on my father's 4x5-inch view camera. You know, this is a big camera on a tripod. You look at the picture upside down and backwards, which is actually a great way to learn about composition. So I take the black and white, 4x5-inch negatives and develop these in the basement and then make the prints in my parents' basement. So I've been doing photography since before you were born.
You give lots of workshops and seminars, and I've been witness to them. They're great, and you're known as a very easy to follow instructor. You try to break it down to segments to make it very easy. What do you find that people struggle with the most, your students?
I think that the biggest problem is people don't know their cameras. You know, if you want to come on one of my workshops, I say you have to learn, you have to know how to shoot on manual. And believe it or not, a lot of people have trouble doing that. You know, I do shoot a lot of my pictures on aperture priority, but knowing how to shoot on manual is very, very important. So that's one thing, but they don't know their camera controls well enough. You know, they're struggling around adjusting the f-stop and the shutter speed and the aperture and the ISO and the white balance and all that. This has to become like second nature. You have to go out there and it has to become basically like iPhone photography. You have to be able to do these things automatically so you can focus on composition. You know, Edward Weston said, composition is the strongest way of seeing. So, you know, that's one of the cool things about being photographers. And the people who are watching this, you know, congratulations. You see the world differently than everybody else because you're photographers. So composition is the strongest way of seeing. But if you're bogged down in all this technical stuff, it's a little hard to see.
So basically what you're saying is people don't know fundamental photography, is what I'm getting.
Well, they know about composition, they know about light, but they have to know their camera controls. That's what they struggle with, because if you're running around photographing someone in a remote area, you have to be able to know what aperture to set to blur the background, or take an environmental shot with everything in the scene in focus. So you have to know about what a shutter speed will do, about what an aperture will do.
So a good advice is take your camera and go home or go to your backyard and play with it until you get to know what the camera does, what combinations do.
Well, you know I play guitar.
Yeah.
And, you know, if Carlos Santana was here with Eric Clapton and they were jamming here, they wouldn't be thinking about what notes they're playing, what key they're in, how they're bending the notes, and what they're doing with the foot pedals and the knobs. They're just going to be doing it. If they had to think, okay, this is what this adjustment's going to do, oh, I have to switch playing in this key or that key, and I'm going to press, it's never going to happen. So, you know, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a great book called Outliers. And in that book, he talks about the people who are successful, people who practice.
Yeah, I know. I read the book. It's a great book.
It's a great book.
So, which brings me to another question that's kind of related. In your opinion, what's more important for a person that wants to be good at photography? Raw talent or technique?
Well, it's a good question. I think you have to have some talent. You know, you could learn technique, but a great way to learn technique is and to get more talented is to follow the work of others, like getting back to Eric Clapton and Santana. I try to play their guitar solos. I'm copying them, right? So we can get inspiration from other people. So yes, we have to know, we have to know our cameras. We also have to know, what we're doing in the digital darkroom. Because today, for a lot of photographers, it's 50-50. 50% image capture, 50% digital darkroom work. Now, a wedding photographer doesn't think like that. And doesn't work like that because they don't have time to play on all these images. But I have this picture behind me of these 3 lion cubs that I photographed in the Masai Mara, and I did some work on it. And what I say about doing work on your picture is this. Do you know Ruth Bernhardt?
Yes.
Ruth Bernhardt, very famous black and white photographer, died a few years ago. She had a wonderful expression, and the expression is, you can't spend too much time working on a picture because your soul is in the picture. So spend a lot of time working on, setting up the shot. I spent some time actually setting up the lighting for this, and so spend some time setting up the shot, but also spend time working on your picture, and go back and go back and back again, trying to make the best possible picture that you can make.
I heard you say on I think it was one of your blogs, one of your tips. You're very famous for like little short snippets of tips. I love that. So one of them was steal. Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, it's called, last year there was a book written, it's called Steal Like an Artist. And this is it was on the New York Times bestseller list. I think it cost $10. You could download it and read it in 20 minutes. And it starts out with a quote by Salvador Dali. And the quote is something to the effect of, if you're not willing to imitate anything, you're going to create nothing.
Yeah.
So, you saw that picture that I did, the girl with the pearl earring. I looked at Vermeer's painting, I looked at the light, I looked at the shadows, I looked at the catch light in the eye. So I wanted to recreate that. So, I did the best I could do, but I learned a lot. So I was stealing like an artist. So that's a good book. I recommend reading that book, Steal Like an Artist. Then I recommend, whether you're into portraiture or still lifes or landscapes, go on the web, download a picture of like a still life, like, flowers or fruit in a bowl, and try to copy that. Try to steal that lighting technique, that composition technique. However, there's a big difference, Vered, between copying and plagiarism. So if you're going to steal, definitely give credit where credit is due, which is something I always do.
Yeah, no, I know you do. And I love the portrait that you did with the girl with the pearl. It's beautiful.
Thank you. My friend's daughter.
You've been around, obviously, for a long time. You're very established. You have, how many books? 40 books out? And
Thanks for reminding me that I've been around for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, it keeps you young, so it's good. But you have books and you have apps, and you're always on the cutting edge of technology. You know what's going to come next, and you're using it. You're doing it. But with everybody nowadays having, a great camera that can do everything, do you think people can, is there still room in the market for people to make money as a photographer?
Well, I think education is a great way to make money. That's a good business model. Look at Photoshop world. The top photographers in the world teach there. They're the top photographers, yet they're into education. So online education, in-app education is very, very important. And what I tell people is this, I've been around for a long time. And thanks again for reminding me. I've been around for a long time, and people ask my advice, my business advice all the time. And I say, well, what's your financial advisor tell you? And they say, what? I say, well, my guess is your financial advisor tells you to diversify. You don't want to have all your money in one stock. You don't want to have all your money in one place. You want to diversify. So if something goes down, you still have something else going here. If something goes up, two things go up, that's great. So in your business life, in your financial life, diversification is important. So in your photography, diversify. So I have books, I have apps, I have workshops, I have online classes. I do one-on-one photo sessions, I do workshops, I do seminars. I think I do about 10 different things. So I've diversified. And that's, now some people will say, well, what I suggest is specialize. Specialize in food photography, for example, or specialize in fashion photography, or wildlife photography. That could work. It's really what you want to do. But on that note, being involved in social media is really important. You were here once, I had 40,000 followers on Google+. Now it's up to like, and that was only a few years ago, now it's up to like 700,000. Because I post a lot. On Twitter, it's about 80,000. So I'm always promoting, stuff that I'm doing, stuff my friends are doing. But with every promotion that I'm doing, I'm trying to make it educational. And when you tweet or whatever, you just can't say, basically, buy my stuff. You have to say, here are like 7 tips for photographing horses, which I have up on my site now, that you could use, by the way, on my Provence workshop. So you have to make everything educational. You just don't want to, there's so much stuff on the web where people are just saying, buy this, buy that.
Yeah, it's true. And the old paradigm was, no, you have to specialize. I remember when I was in New York and I had my book and I had a few different things in it, and I went to some agents and they're like, no, you can't be doing food photography, although it's good, and fashion photography, although it's good, and portrait photography, although it's good. But pick one and bring me a portfolio with only that, because that's pigeonholing you. Now it's no longer the case.
So you're a very good photographer. I learned a lot about lighting from you in your studio.
Thank you. Coming from you, it's a compliment. The person that does magic with speed lights. Oh my God, I've seen you work at the photo shows all over the place. And what you do with those little speed lights is amazing. Yeah, and people can check it on your site. You have some stuff from there, so that's great.
Yeah, well, actually, if they want to learn, I have about 4 or 5 articles on there. If they go on Google and just do a search, Rick Sammon, Daylight Fill and Flash, I have a couple of, actually more than a few tutorials on that.
Okay, great, yeah, and we'll link to that also. Speaking of which, I'm trying to make good on the "you've been around for a long time" statement. So speaking of which, you do have, because I've worked with you before. We've done, we worked on a book together. We've done some DVDs together. I've been graciously invited to some of your seminars as a guest instructor. You have the stamina of a 20-year-old rock star. But instead of hanging in wild parties, you actually host them, and you do seminars and do workshops, and like you said, the getaway safari to wonderful locations. Where do you get all that stamina from? Where do you get your inspiration from? And do you find that it's getting harder and harder the longer you've been doing it? Well,
you've been to my house. You know that hill that you come into my house? There's been a shift, I think, in the plate tectonics recently, because the hill is getting a little steeper. But I have, it is getting a little steeper, but back in April, I made a commitment to be very healthy. So I lost 12 pounds since April, and I do 2 45-minute walks every morning, every afternoon, and being healthy is the key. I met a Buddhist monk once, and at the temple up here. You've been to the Buddhist temple, right? Where we do the workshop. And I asked him, I said, what's the most important thing in Buddhism? And he looked at me and he said, and some of your viewers will be surprised, I think, he said, well, the most important thing in Buddhism is being healthy. And then he explained, if you're not healthy, I know you're very, very healthy, and you're very conscious of this. If you're not healthy, how can you do anything else? How can you lead a workshop? How can you run around to photograph a sunset with a tripod in the dark? So I started getting healthy 23 years ago when my son was born, because we're playing wiffle ball in the backyard and we're playing football and all this stuff. So actually being healthy is my #1 priority. My #1 priority.
Where do you draw inspiration though for your workshops and for your photography?
Well, I think basically from life. I know that sounds maybe kind of silly, but I'm pretty excited to be alive, having been around this long. Yeah, but you look at the light. I think light is very inspiring. We go down to the sunset on the river here. We go down there so many times. We probably go down in the summer every night. In the winter, maybe 3 times a week. And you get inspiration by the light. It's the same place. Inspired by the light. I think there's a song about that. But also on the workshops, I get inspired for sure by the workshop participants. I could be, there pontificating about, oh, this is the shot, and the shot is a wide-angle shot with great depth of field, and hold your camera up here, and then some young kid will come on and get down low and say, well, you know what, I'm going to shoot the telephoto shot. I'm going to shake my camera while I'm doing it, and in Photoshop, I'm going to add, some other effect. So I get, this is a great way to learn. Teach a workshop, you'll learn a lot from the students.
Rick, looking back, is there anything that you regret, or like mistakes that you've done, or something that you wouldn't do again, or something that you would do again?
People ask me that a lot, and I don't think so. Being a photographer, being a freelance photographer is it's like a roller coaster. The highs are highs and the lows are lows, and it goes like this. But being on that roller coaster, my friend, is way better than being on the merry-go-round. And I used to work in an advertising agency, and I was on the merry-go-round. So I left when I was 40, and I've been doing this. Now I'm 64. I've been doing this for all these years, and I don't think I'd change. Don't think I'd change anything. And I'm just, you know, not only is being healthy my personal #1 priority, but you know, my family is also the top priority. And you know, Marco, you know, my son, you know how much time I spent with him, and that's, if people ask me for any advice, it would be spend as much time as you can. So when someone asks you, are there any regrets? The person doesn't say, you know, I wish I spent more time with my son or daughter or whatever. So I don't have any regrets.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I'm a recent, you know, I just had a baby a little while ago, and I gave up a lot, including my studio, to be kind of like a stay-home mom, and I love every minute of it. So you're so right. You know, look around you and pay attention to what's around you, your friends, your family. A lot of people will say, oh, I want to be famous, and you know, and then they get there and they really don't have much.
I know.
Beside the fame.
Family first.
And yeah, exactly. What's next on your plate? You're always running around.
Next on my plate, well, as a freelancer, I have to plan 2015 and 2016. So we're planning India next year, doing workshops to Iceland, Provence, France, where we're photographing white horses. So planning that, planning seminars. I have a new book coming out next year called Creative Visualization for Photographers. I'm writing articles. I have at least 3 apps in the works right now. One on composition, one on Bosque dell'Apache, where they have a lot of birds at this time of year. And the other one is on composition, Bosque dell'Apache, and I forget what the other one is. I just have so many things going. I forget. I actually have to check. I have so many things going.
I'm saying what I love about your apps is that they're easy to get, very accessible, and non-expensive. So anybody can get them.
$1.99. Well, Photo Sundial, which helps you find the best light anywhere on the planet, that's $2.99. But you know, I have 36 books. And I have a new book coming out next year, but apps are just so cool because, you know, a $30 book here could cost, you know, $40 or $50 more in Australia, right? Who's going to buy it? Not too many people. $2.99 app, if you have 200,000 photographers, serious photographers in Australia, they might buy it. So that's another piece of advice today. Think globally. Don't think, you know, a wedding photographer is probably going to think more locally, but for a photographer like what I do, I think you definitely want to think globally.
That's great advice globally today. Yeah, the internet has changed everything. It changed my work. It changed everybody's, you know, economically speaking, changed everybody's revenue stream.
It's changed everything. I know people, and you know the people too, have had to close their studios, right? They scaled down and then they closed, or they had to let go of assistants. That's why this, if you diversify, you know, if something goes down here, book sales go down, app sales go up. So it changes all the time.
Yeah, Rick, do you have any final words just to inspire beginner photographers or somebody that's been doing it as a hobby and wants to get better? Anything comes to mind?
Never give up. Never give up and believe in yourself, and believe, yeah, really believe in yourself. You know, one of my favorite expressions talking about famous last words are, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Henry Ford said something like that. He said something like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. You're correct, right.
Yeah, I think it was Albert Einstein who said that, no?
I think he might have said it too. Maybe Henry Ford didn't give him credit. Maybe he stole like an artist.
Yeah. Rick, anything else you want to add that you want to talk about, that you feel, because you're such a diversified person. I can talk to you for hours. And I really encourage people to go and check out your blog and your website. Remind me, your website is ricksammon.com?
ricksammon.com. Another piece of advice that I give people, believe it or not, is go for a walk. You know, everyone's glued to their cell phones, right? They're doing text messages, they're doing emails, right? They're checking this, they're at their computers, they have to rush home, they're watching the news, whatever. If you go for a walk, that's a time you could think. There's an expression, it's not my expression, but I love this one. The expression is, angels whisper. You don't have to be religious, by the way, to appreciate this, I don't think, and I'm not that religious, but the expression goes, angels whisper to a man who goes for a walk. And it should be a man or woman, I know. But the thing is, I get a lot of ideas when I'm out walking. How can you possibly think about anything how can you get creative ideas when you're glued to your phone and your ping's going off, your email's on, right? And people today, they expect emails to be, answered in 3 seconds. So, never give up. Go for a walk and believe in yourself.
And get a dog. I don't know why I said that. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Rick, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're so busy, and I really appreciate you took the time to sit with me and chat like this.
Well,
thank you so much.
You're an amazing person, amazing photographer, an amazing mom, and I really want to thank you for having me. So now we just have to get together live in person sometime. I know. And again, I encourage everybody to go check out your website and check out what you're doing and follow you around, because it will pay off big time for them. They can learn a lot. Thank you. So Rick, thank you, and have a great year. You too.